Okay, so what we're going to think about now are some Christian reasons why we should get involved in Christian-Muslim dialogue to equip you so that when people say, so why should we get involved? Why is it that we should get our young people to meet with Muslims? You'll have some reasons to help answer their questions. And whilst I recognise that Christians come from a whole variety of traditions and would look for different reasons and to different sources for their inspiration, as Christians we can all look to the model of Jesus as an example for our lives. And so that's what I've attempted to do here, is to just look at a few examples of how Jesus behaved and what he said as a way of inspiring us and others as to why we should get involved in dialogue. And the first one is this phrase that someone gave to me a while ago: Jesus loitered in ambiguous situations. What did he mean by that? Well, in Matthew chapter 9, we read about Jesus hanging around, having a meal with people who the religious leaders, his own people, looked on and said, "Why are you meeting with them? Why are you spending time with them? We don't approve of them." And sadly, I have to say, there are Christians who sometimes say to me, "Why are you encouraging Christian teenagers to spend time with Muslims? That's not really what we should do. We should be out there doing other things. Why are you wanting to be with them?" And this example, I think, is great. Here's Jesus saying, because I'm going to sit and be with these people. This is where I came to be. And he was willing to sit, to share the food, to share the hospitality. And he took his disciples with him, people who had been his followers for a very short time. He took them as well and sat and, as I say, loitered in ambiguous situations. He was in places where other people said, "What are you doing there?" And sometimes when we're in dialogue, it can feel like we're following that example. So are we willing to sit and eat with those that others might be suspicious of? The second one, very well known, but one that we can apply well here. Jesus commanded his disciples to love. In Matthew chapter 22, someone comes to Jesus and says, "What are the two greatest commandments?" And Jesus said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your strength, and love your neighbour as yourself." Very, very famous commands. But what does it mean to love your neighbour? What does it mean for us to actually love our Muslim neighbours? I'm convinced that if you're going to love someone, you have to meet them. How can we love someone if we've never ever met them, if we've never sat down with them and listened to them, listened to their concerns, listened to their stories? So part of the reason for getting together is so that we can obey this command to love our neighbours. You notice Jesus didn't say, "Respect your neighbour." Had he have said that, we could sit at home and watch the news and say, "There are Muslims there, I respect them." He didn't say tolerate them. We could say, well, they've moved in and that's okay. But Jesus said love them. And I think for us Christians, that's a real challenge. How do we love our Muslim neighbour if we are never prepared to go and meet them? And dialogue is a way of meeting and obeying this command. The next one, Jesus recognised the faith of others. In Matthew chapter 8, Jesus meets a Roman centurion, a Roman who was no doubt worshipping all the gods that the Romans worshipped. And yet, when Jesus spoke to him, when Jesus heard his answer and saw the way he behaved, Jesus turned to the crowd and said, "I've never seen such faith in all Israel." He was able to recognise that this Roman, who was worshipping in a different way and of a different religion, still had faith. He didn't dismiss him. He didn't tell him he was wrong. He was able to recognise that. And part of engaging in dialogue is that we can meet people of another faith, people who have faith. And often young people, sometimes they meet them at school and see that they're meeting people of a different faith, but aren't quite sure how to talk to them, aren't quite sure how to relate to them. And Jesus here was someone who was able to say, this person has faith, and was able to meet him without condemning him. Jesus taught, I believe, a very radical attitude towards other people. There's a very, very famous verse in Luke chapter 6. It's possibly one of the most famous and I would suggest misused verses of the Bible. Jesus said, "Do to others as you would have them do to you." Sometimes called the philosophical golden rule. The trouble is when we say that, we kind of put it off into philosophy and forget all about it. I don't believe Jesus intended us to do that. I think he meant this as a practical guide to life. Do to others as you would have them do to you. So what does that mean for us as Christians when we meet Muslims? Do to their scriptures as you would have them do to yours. Do you want them to read the Bible and take it seriously and listen to it? Then do to their scriptures as you would have them do to yours. Do you want them to listen to you? then do to them as you would have them do to you. Do you want them to be nice about your religion? Then do to others as you would have them do to you. And we start to see how radical this verse is. Imagine a community, a society where everyone lived by this verse, where we did to others as we would have them do to you. And I think that's a real challenge for us in dialogue. Are we willing to take that command seriously, to reclaim it from its sort of philosophical kind of area it's been sent to reclaim it and live by that? Do to others as you would have them do to you. A verse that, again, very well known, but I wonder how seriously we take this. Jesus promised blessings for peacemakers. We live in a society where often there isn't peace between different communities. Sometimes there's that peace of, well, we're not fighting, but we actually ignore each other. Well, I don't believe that's what Jesus meant by being a peacemaker, by real peace. And you notice Jesus didn't say, blessed are the peace supporters. If he'd said that, well, we can all be peace supporters. But he said, blessed are the peacemakers. And so in communities where different groups just don't meet or are antagonistic to each other, what does it mean to be peacemakers? Where can we go to do that? How can we receive this blessing and be peacemakers? By bringing young people together, by involving in dialogue, we're being faithful to this command. We are being peacemakers. So that's a very, very quick look, a very brief look at what Jesus said about the way he modelled his example, and ones that I believe we can take forward as a way of engaging and reasons to engage in Christian-Muslim dialogue.